Welcome to The Explainer. You know, inside every single one of us is this incredible built-in repair manual. It's what our bodies use every single day. Today, we're going to dive into how we heal, what happens when that process breaks down as we get older, and some of the really cutting-edge science that's trying to reboot the whole system.
I know, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But believe it or not, this exact question is at the heart of a huge medical revolution happening right now. We're talking about moving way beyond just treating symptoms. The goal here is to actually harness the body's own incredible power to heal itself, to fix the problem at its source.
Okay, so to figure out how to fix healing, first we've got to understand how it fails in the first place.
Let's take something simple, like a paper cut. Your body knows exactly what to do. It's got this perfect three-step plan. First, inflammation comes in to clean things up. Then proliferation starts rebuilding the tissue. And finally, remodeling makes it all strong again. Boom, done. But with chronic wounds, like a diabetic ulcer, it's a totally different story. They get stuck, completely stalled out in that first inflammatory phase. The whole healing assembly line just grinds to a halt.
And this isn't some small problem. The failure to heal is a huge deal with a massive price tag. I mean, just in the United States, we're spending over $25 billion a year on chronic wound care. That is a staggering amount of money for a problem where the body's healing system is just stuck on pause.
So, what's going on here? Why does our amazing ability to repair ourselves seem to fade as we get older? Well, the clues are literally written into our own genetic code.
All right, let's talk about something called a telomere. The best way to think about them is like those little plastic tips on your shoelaces, right? They're these protective caps at the very end of our chromosomes, and their whole job is to stop our precious DNA from unraveling and getting damaged.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because these telomeres act like a kind of biological countdown clock. See, every single time one of our cells divides, those little caps get just a tiny bit shorter. And after about 40 to 60 divisions, that's what scientists call the Hayflick limit, they get so short they can't do their job anymore. So the cell does the smart thing. It just stops dividing. It basically retires.
Okay, so let's zoom back in to the site of an injury. There's another major player we need to talk about, the macrophage. Think of these guys as the immune system's specialized construction crew. And this crew has two teams. First, you've got the M1s. They're the demolition crew. Their job is to rush in, create some inflammation, and just clear out all the debris and bacteria. Then, once they're done, the M2s show up. They're the rebuilding crew. They're anti-inflammatory, and they give the signal to start building new, healthy tissue.
Now, here is the absolute key. In a normal, healthy wound, the demolition crew finishes their job, clocks out, and lets the rebuilders get to work. But in those chronic wounds we talked about, the M1 demolition crew, they just never leave. They never get the signal to stop. So they just keep causing inflammation, and the M2 rebuilders can't even get on site to start their work. And this all ties back to those telomeres. As cells get older and their telomeres get shorter, they get worse at sending and receiving signals. So the call to bring in the rebuilding crew either never gets made or it's just too weak and the whole system just stalls.
So this all leads to a really fascinating question, right? If the healing process is getting stuck at the cellular level, is there anything we can do to, influence that environment? Well, the answer just might be on our dinner plate.
Now, a lot of this research is in animal models so far, but it's pointing to three specific dietary strategies that seem to create a, quote, pro-regenerative state inside the body. We're talking about caloric restriction, different kinds of fasting, and the ketogenic diet.
And the thinking behind this is actually pretty powerful. You see, as this quote from the National Institutes of Health explains, one of the big hallmarks of aging is that our stem cells, the body's master repair cells, they just don't work as well. So it makes a lot of sense, right? If you can use your diet to boost the health of those critical cells, you're giving your internal repair crew a major leg up.
Okay, so that's what we can potentially do from the inside out. But science is also working on powerful therapies from the outside in. And a perfect example is one of the most common signs of getting older, osteoarthritis. That painful joint damage is a classic case of the body's repair crew just not being able to keep up.
Stem cell therapy is showing incredible promise for actually rebuilding that worn-out cartilage. It's basically using your body's own raw materials to fix the problem. But, and this is a huge but, the cost is just astronomical. In the US, you could be looking at an average of over $30,000 for a single joint. And to make matters worse, insurance almost never covers it, because they call it experimental. So that whole bill, it's usually coming right out of the patient's pocket.
And that is why you hear about so many people becoming medical tourists, flying to other countries for treatment. It's really important to understand that this crazy price difference usually isn't about the quality of care. It really comes down to things like a lower cost of living, much cheaper malpractice insurance, and frankly, governments that are actively encouraging regenerative medicine.
So what does the procedure actually look like? Well, it's surprisingly simple. The whole thing only takes a few hours, and you go home the same day. Step 1, they harvest stem cells from your own body, usually from fat or bone marrow. Step 2, they put those cells in a centrifuge and spin them down to create this super concentrated healing cocktail. And then for the final step, they use an ultrasound to guide a needle right to the damaged spot and inject that cocktail directly into the joint.
Okay, the big question. Does it actually work? Well, for people with mild to moderate arthritis, the results are looking really, really promising. We're seeing that about 75%, 3 out of 4 patients, get significant pain relief and can move around a lot better. Now, it's not a magic bullet for everyone, but for a lot of people, it's a really powerful way to wind back the clock on joint damage.
So, let's pull all of this together. We've talked about telomeres, diet, macrophages, stem cells. What does it all mean for the future of how we get older?
Look, the promise here is just enormous, but we have to be realistic. We're not there yet. There are some big hurdles. For one, we've got to figure out how to take all this cool diet research from mice and apply it to real, diverse people. Then there's the massive issue of cost and insurance coverage for these new therapies. Plus, you've got this patchwork of different regulations all over the world. And let's not forget, we're still trying to understand how our modern diets are affecting our body's natural ability to heal in the first place.
But by starting to truly decode our body's repair manual, something fundamental is changing. We're beginning to see aging less as something that just happens to us, and more as a process that we can actually influence. And that leaves us with a really powerful, really exciting question to think about. Will we one day treat aging itself as a preventable condition?